going to call people hopefully in the order that they signed in, with one exception. We have, first up, we have Cynthia Walsworth.
My name is Cynthia Walsworth, and I have Zoe Walsworth, and Elijah Walsworth, and Ty Walsworth, and we are Carrollton residents for 8 years, and we oppose this being done right by our street. And I think my husband would like to speak also.
Could you state your name for the record, sir?
Cynthia Ann Walsworth.
I'm Ty Walsworth. We brought our children tonight because we would like to teach them to be civically minded. This is part of their educational process as well. I do hope that maybe this was part of their story, and we'd be able to tell them that they were part of making a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Charles Emery.
Good evening. My name is Charles Emery, and I'd like to thank the Commission for the opportunity to make some comments. I'm here to speak in opposition to the reference permit, which is permit number 1312B, and offer the following comments. I've been privileged to serve Lewisville and Denton County for the past 36 years in leadership positions, including City Council, P&Z, Transportation Boards, Economic Development Boards, and Commissions. Most of my career was dedicated to planning and developing office, industrial, and commercial parks and master plan residential communities in 30 cities and 10 states. In several instances, industrial or business parks were proximate to smaller landfills, type 1 and 4. In these cases, there were constant issues with persistent odor, unsightly view lines, and uncertainty with respect to the integrity of subsurface bentonite walls and preventing hazardous and toxic leaching. Lewisville has 3 landfill sites. 2 are type 1 organic waste and 1 type 4 for construction waste material. Camelot, one of the 3, type 1 landfill, is owned by Farmers Branch, which is approximately 8 miles south of the landfill in Dallas County. Such landfill is bordered on 3 sides by the city of Lewisville and 1 side by the city of Carrollton, all in Denton County. The 3 landfills are approaching 1,000 surface acres collectively. Moreover, at least 20 cities have used these landfills for decades. Lewisville has historically played the good neighbor role and has been a cooperative regional partner in accommodating rapid population growth. However, in my opinion, we have dedicated an excessive amount of land to satisfy the waste disposal needs of other cities. Moreover, we have sacrificed opportunities for business and residential development contiguous to such landfills with unpleasant odors and unsightly landfill activity and conditions. Most of the future business development opportunities in Lewisville are clustered along the south side of 121 East between Railroad Street on the west and NTTH 121 Toll Road on the east. Additionally, there is developed and occupied residential housing in that corridor proximate to the Camelot Landfill. In the 1840s, my family settled several thousand acres 1 mile north of the Camelot Landfill. Although it was a great sacrifice, my family has reconciled to the loss of such land, which is now providing water supply through Lake Lewisville for Dallas and Denton counties, as well as the public use of several hundred acres for natural parkland south of the dam. However, it is grievous to think that there might be a 200-foot pile of trash, type 1 trash, near with its pervasive odor, offensive aesthetics, and contamination of adjacent groundwater and raw water supplies for downstream treatment. The mission statement, as you know, the TCEQ, states in part that the Commission strives to protect our state's public health and natural resources consistent with sustainable economic development. That's in quote. It is apparent that if the Commission is dedicated to protecting public health and natural resources while sustaining economic development, the request for permitted expansion of the Camelot Landfill is diametrically opposed to the above-mentioned objections of the Commission and should be denied. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Jerry Varner, followed by Jeff Endonian.
Thank you. I'm Jerry Varner, the Vice President of Transit Operations for the Denton County Transportation Authority. I want to read a letter into the record as an official response from DCTA. The Denton County Transportation Authority opposes the current request by Farmers Branch to raise the Camelot Landfill height to Lewisville. This proposal has the potential to limit economic development opportunities around DCTA rail stations, impact the quality of life of the residents we serve, and negatively impact the environment and our natural resources. Lewisville residents have invested significant sales tax in DCTA since 2004. While improved mobility was a central reason for their investment, the secondary was economic benefits and development potential around transit stations. DCTA has since invested over $300 million in the area to address mobility needs and create an environment suitable to encourage and support adjacent sustainable developments. DCTA's Old Town Station at 617 East Main Street and Hebron Station at 952 Lakeside Circle are within 1 mile of the landfill. DCTA and the City of Lewisville have collaborated on transit-oriented development plans in the areas surrounding both stations. Any increase in size plus the environmental hazards of the landfill could limit the marketability of these surrounding properties. Improving the environment and quality of life of our communities are inherent to DCTA's mission. The existing Camelot Landfill already presents concerns about air and water quality through the current VOC arsenic noted violations. This site is adjacent to a major water supply conduit for local lakes and treatment plants. The plants serve over 1.5 million customers, including Lewisville. Increased use over and above the original intended use of the Camelot Landfill will only worsen the impacts to our natural environment and air quality. DCTA is a neighbor to various landfill facilities. We did not anticipate at the time of our property acquisitions that the size and intended use of these landfills would change. The proposed changes not only impact the future course of development around our properties, but change the future course of 2 cities and our surrounding environment. For these reasons, DCTA opposes the request by Farmers Branch as outlined in permit 1312B. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Jeff. And
Mayor, if I may, I would like to allow our City of Carrollton's mayor to speak first.
okay, could you step up and state your name for the record?
Hey Jeff, my name is Matthew Marchand. I'm the mayor of Carrollton. First, I'd like to tell you that I appreciate the opportunity to have this hearing in the city, and thank you for coming here tonight. We know you are in a difficult position, and just appreciate your attention tonight. I'd also like to thank our large audience, which is smaller now than it was before, but I would note for the record that it appeared to me we had more than 500 people in a standing room only large facility at Creekview High School. And for that, we're very grateful that everyone listened to the message and came out. I think it will make a difference. This expansion permit should be denied. The conditions surrounding this site have materially changed since the TCEQ last issued a permit on this property. And there are now thousands of Carrollton and Lewisville residents and businesses that will be directly impacted by the expansion permit. These residents and businesses planted their lives and investments in this area based on the existing regulatory structure that is in place, which provides for a maximum useful life of, depending on who you ask, I'll say roughly 20 more years. If this expansion permit is granted, it will result in more than 100 years of additional landfill activity and 202 more feet of visual light in an extremely dense urban area. Some said that this permit is about providing for regional landfill capacity, which I struggle to understand. There are thousands upon thousands of acres located in Dallas and Collin and Tarrant County that would be more appropriate for a landfill than this site due to their land use patterns and development. In addition to the human and business costs that would result from the TCEQ's approval of the expansion permit, there are important state and regional environmental issues to be considered as well. Unfortunately, and bizarrely, this landfill is located along the Elm Fork of the Trinity River, an important body of water that provides drinking water to much of the North Texas area and continuing on to the Houston area. Hazardous waste, including arsenic and trichloroethylene, have been detected in the groundwater monitoring wells located near the landfill and adjacent to the river. There are portions of this landfill that do not have a liner and where years of unregulated waste was allowed. Allowing more capacity to bury this problem is not in the best interest of the citizens around here or the entire state of Texas. In addition, the region is spending hundreds of millions of dollars on several improvement projects up and down the Trinity River, not the least of which is in the city of Dallas. The entire Trinity River development there is nearly $1 billion of public and private investment, and I think that this application and the impact on the Trinity River also affects those activities in the city of Dallas. Also of concern is the complicated regulatory structure that affects this site. It's owned by one municipality, Farmers Branch, located and regulated in another, Lewisville, and has a direct impact on yet another city, Carrollton. This does not allow for adequate oversight at the local level. In addition, the applicant appears to be ignoring applicable Lewisville zoning and land use regulations, and these factors should be among those items considered by the TCEQ. This use is a nuisance that requires constant oversight, and extending that active period by more than 100 years is unacceptable. In summary, the City of Carrollton is adamantly opposed to this expansion permit because of the devastating impact it will have on the quality of life of Carrollton and Lewisville residents and businesses, the continuing pollution of one of Texas' most important water sources, and the extensive availability of more suitable sites. It is our hope that the City of Farmers Branch will withdraw this application immediately because of the negative impact it will have on its neighbors and the residents. If they do not, we insist that the TCEQ fill its duty and mission to the citizens of Carrollton and Texas and deny the expansion permit. And when I refer to the TCEQ, I'm talking about not just the regulators, but also the executive director and the appointed commissioners from the governor. In addition, I want to be clear that we are requesting a second public meeting if and when a draft permit is issued, such meeting to be held at a time that allows for adequate review of such draft permit by the affected parties. Thank you for your time.
Followed by Councilwoman Lisa Sutter.
Thank you very much. For the record, once more, my name is Jeff Andonian. I am the Mayor Pro Tem, City of Carrollton. I'd like to begin by going to the front page I went to of the TCEQ's webpage, and it had your agency philosophy, which I found most interesting, quote unquote. We make our decisions based on law, common sense, good science, and fiscal responsibility. Now, I applaud the TCEQ to have a philosophy like that. The truth of the matter is that the Camelot Landfill has been plagued for years with multiple violations in which the TCEQ has had to step in groundwater violation. The City of Farmers Branch's Camelot Landfill, along with its operations partner, Republic Services, have not met the safety and quality of life and health requirements that the TCEQ and the citizens of Texas would expect from a properly operated and managed landfill. I have concerns beyond just the current contamination that's there. We heard this evening the representative from Farmers Branch essentially deny that they have a contamination issue. I have heard Farmers Branch representatives in multiple quarterly landfill meetings deny that they have an issue with contamination. They call it migration, they use all kinds of word games. But the bottom line is the landfill leaks. The liner has failed. And if it hasn't failed and it hasn't leaked, then why, pray God, is Farmers Branch requesting that a slurry wall be placed all around the perimeter? I am requesting, on the behalf of my just shy of 125,000 citizens, I am requesting on the behalf of our friends in Lewisville and for all citizens in North Texas and along the Trinity Corridor, for our children and our descendants for the next century, please protect our health and welfare of all our citizens. And in closing, I would like to quote one of my favorite Churchillian quotes here. It's about the truth. And he said, "The truth is incontrovertible. Malice may attack it, ignorance may deride it. But in the end, there it is." And the truth is, Farmers Branch's Camelot Landfill is an ecologically compromised landfill. I ask you, I beg you, I plead you to take your responsibility to deny this further permit request for an extension and to enforce regulations on the existing landfill. Thank you.
want to tell you that I appreciate the difficult task you have before you. I know how difficult it is to try and weigh the issues to come to the best decision possible. Fortunately, I believe your decision is a more straightforward one. Groundwater monitoring wells near the Elm Fork of the Trinity River have detected hazardous waste, including arsenic and TCE. The likely source has been identified as the old, unlined sections of Farmers Branch landfill. The experts believe there is enough evidence to raise legitimate concerns. Given that protecting the environment should be a top priority of the Texas Commission of Environmental Quality, I feel this committee should firmly place the safety, health, and welfare of our communities over the interests of a landfill owned by the city of Farmers Branch. Time is on your side. The 2011 annual report for Camelot Landfill acknowledges that there is approximately 22 years of life for the landfill. I urge you to deny the request for expansion, to allow time for further testing and any needed remediation. Do not rush to add 100 years of additional capacity now when years of capacity are left. Do not allow a land that is suspected of oozing contamination into potential water sources to bury its dangers under hundreds of feet of waste. That is a path that is potentially devastating and hazardous to the many communities around the landfill. I know the burden you bear. I urge you to not act rashly. Please deny the 200-foot expansion request.
Thank you. Honorable Neil Ferguson. Is the Honorable Neil Ferguson, City of Lewisville? Followed by Councilman Terry Simmons. Simon.
Neil Ferguson, Lewisville City Council. Good evening again, and thank you for holding this public hearing so that concerns regarding Camelot Landfill permit requests to be heard. My comments regard municipal solid waste proposed permit number 1312B, Camelot Landfill. In response to the City of Farmers Branch Camelot Landfill application for a major amendment of a Type 1 MSW permit to authorize a vertical and horizontal expansion of the landfill, I am opposed to the major amendment for the reasons that I will state. First, I have concerns about public health due to the detection of hazardous contaminants in several monitoring wells on the south side of the landfill, and those contaminants include TCE, DCE, and arsenic. The monitoring wells wherein these toxins were detected lie between the old pre-subtitle D portion of the landfill and the Trinity River. This confirms my belief that the integrity of the pre-subtitle D liner has been compromised both at the bottom of the landfill and at the side. Further, I question whether there is an effective groundwater monitoring system that meets TCEQ and EPA rules in operation at the current landfill, and also those proposed in the amendment, because the aquifer beneath the site, that is beneath the leaking bottom liner, is deeper than the current set of monitoring wells and is therefore not monitored by the current set of wells. Instead, the current monitoring system is monitoring sands that are connected to a channel of the Trinity River. As such, both the current and proposed groundwater monitoring systems fail to meet legal requirements of both TCEQ and EPA. Second, there are procedural irregularities that raise issues about whether due process is being provided to those, such as the City of Lewisville, that are concerned about public health and safety aspects of this landfill. Specifically, I'm referring to the use of the modification process by the City of Farmers Branch during the pendency of this major permit amendment. Its modification request to use contaminated soil contained in permit request 1312A is an issue appropriate for consideration in this major permit amendment, and these should not have been bifurcated. They should be combined and considered together. Lastly, there are technical issues regarding the adequacy of the application and the compliance of the proposed permit amendment with applicable laws and regulations. For example, the landfill has ignored the City of Lewisville zoning procedures and therefore must be considered to be in violation of the land use compatibility requirements of TCEQ rules and regulations. Further, I have concerns about air pollution from this facility. In addition to the emissions from gasoline-contaminated soil and daily operation of the landfill, there is a potential problem associated with the burning of landfill gas that is being collected, at least in part, in an attempt to remedy the groundwater contamination. Prior to any major amendment, there should be at least a full analysis of air pollution issues from the site, including compliance with all applicable standards. In short, I respectfully request that this permit amendment to authorize the vertical and horizontal expansion of landfill be denied by the Commission because of public health issues and other deficiencies that exist in the site. I also want to go on and comment on one particular item. Councilman T.J. Gilmore will be up here shortly to comment on several of the deficiency items, the 125 different deficiencies that you pointed out to the city of Farmers Branch. But one in particular stood out to me, perhaps because I have a background in oil and gas. And that's not to take away from the other 125 deficiencies. But item 34 states that fractures, including slick and sides, were noted in 8 of the WD series borings, and 3 loggings using mud rotary drilling lost mud circulation during the process in the Eagle Ford Shale. These clearly point to past movement and significant hydraulic conduits that have to raise serious concerns for potential contamination of the Woodbine aquifer. This facility is already involved in groundwater corrective action. Decisions going forward on all aspects of this facility must err substantially on the safe side, given the history of the site and the potential for serious environmental damage that lies ahead. Farmers Branch points out that the value of having this waste site not only is for their disposal needs, but for a modest array of towns for which it collects revenue and accepts their municipal waste. Were this site operated for Farmers Branch alone, it could last perhaps anywhere from 60 to 100 years without further expansion. At the core of its motives is quite simply money, not need. But even if you consider the MSW needs of the towns who use this facility, the benefit of any further expansion quickly pales in comparison to the impact that contamination of the Elm Fork of the Trinity River would have, not just on a long list of local cities, including some very large ones, but potentially from here to Lake Livingston, which is the water supply for Houston, and on to the Gulf of Mexico. Put bluntly, this simply is not an acceptable trade-off. The 1312A and B permit request should be denied as a clear risk to public health. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you had indicated on your sign-in sheet. So, Councilman Terry Simons. Thank you. Councilman John, is it Garino? Garino?
Councilman John Garino, City of Lewisville. A lot of great information coming from Councilman Ferguson, so I'm not going to repeat all that, but I am against the expansion of the landfill and some things that we need to really look at. When that landfill was started, there wasn't the amount of population around it that there is now. Things have grown in the area, and that changes things. If that was land right now, empty with not a landfill, would you allow landfill to be created there now, knowing the population that's around there now? And the thing is, the population is still growing, and it's going to be there. That's something to think about when you make your decision on the expansion or even the continuation of this current landfill. We already know that from the questions and answer period, we already know that it's breached. We have leakage, and the attorney actually mentioned that it did not do its job. Is it going to be too late? What's going to happen in the future? Are we going to have this mass super cleanup someday in the future because something was in there buried and it's causing contamination down? Again, what it comes down to is things have changed. There are people there, there's people everywhere. And I know Farmers Branch is not here, at least I hope they get this message. But they need to look down in their hearts as those elected officials, as human beings, and look at what they are going to do, not just for their city, but what they're doing to their fellow man in the city next to them. and they need to stop it and move somewhere else. Now, landfills, like earlier in the question and answer period, someone had mentioned, where does the trash go if we stop this? Well, it's going to go somewhere, landfills. Well, the landfill just probably won't be near a highly populated, densely populated area. So please consider that. I hope that you think of the impact of the people around there with the smells, there's the odors. That's got to carry some, there's particles in there. What is that doing to people and human beings? So if you consider the human population, the human factor, and I truly doubt that you would allow a landfill to be there now if there wasn't one because of the population and the surrounding. Consider that too in your expansion and consider that into also with the continuation of this landfill. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Urbacheck?
Good evening, Doug Washington, Carrollton City Council. Thank y'all for being here. Do appreciate it. Certainly realize this could have been an awesome 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I also want to thank the school district and Creekview High School for having me here tonight. I will be brief. I think there's a lot of questions about this landfill as it exists today. And there's a lot of technical items that we need to work through to get some answers on before we even consider a modification. So that's what I would ask. I'm obviously opposed to modification. And I think we do have a lot of questions about the way this exists today and the way it impacts our lifestyle, our environment, and our community. We've heard a lot about the technical aspects and the things you go through in this process, but as the applicant pointed out, we're not talking about a building here. We're not talking about 202 feet of building here. We're talking about 202 feet of waste going on top of what's already there. And I think there's a lot of questions that we still need to answer regarding that. Having said that, given that the notice of deficiencies and the applicant has requested for an extension of that to November 19th, is the date I have, and if this public meeting is taking place before the responses to that, I would also like to ask for a second public meeting once we receive those responses from the applicant. Again, thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you. Councilman Thomas Gilmore, followed by Kelly Davis.
Good evening. I'm here to express my concerns regarding permit number 1312B. My name is TJ Gilmore. I am a city councilman in Lewisville, Texas, representing the 96,000 plus residents there. The 1312B permit, also known as the Camelot Landfill expansion. First, I'd like to thank the staff at TCEQ for your obviously thorough reading and documentation of this permit. There is no way it was easy to review a document this full of omissions. Holding this meeting while there are still 126 deficiencies on that permit request is unfair. It's much like our politicians in Washington telling us that, you know, we don't have to read the whole thing to go ahead and vote for it. I expect there to be an additional public meeting once the deficiencies are addressed. These deficiencies aren't simply failures to format a document correctly. They are large and distinct pieces of data needed to ensure quality of life, quality of municipal practices, and most importantly, the quality of the water in the Elm Fork. And by extension, the Trinity River Basin, arguably the most important freshwater source in Texas. And an organization cannot give the most basics of information on how they manage and maintain this facility. How can we trust that they'll protect the watershed? For example, deficiency 5, Farmers Branch fails to identify the acreage being addressed in the pre-subtitle D area, which is needed to understand the impact and future use of the older and less regulated pieces of the landfill. Deficiency 11, the request fails to discuss documented fractures, fracture clusters, fractures with slick sides, and lost circulation identified in 2010 by Weaver Boots. This evidence of faulting beneath or within 200 feet of the existing or proposed units could lead to significant contamination of the watershed if not addressed. Deficiency 14, failure to identify if or when the North Detention Pond will be constructed. Deficiency 15, failure to document wetland determination data forms for 3 sampling sites. Deficiencies 19, 20, 21, and 22 all deal with unclear explanations or lack of explanation of fencing, erosion control, dikes or levees or washout protection. And deficiency 25 has the applicant planting trees in a location where such plantings can perforate with synthetic lining. And this is simply the first 1/5 of the issues. And yet we as a community are expected to respond to this incomplete request, and you as the TCEQ are expected to make a ruling. Managing a waste stream is no easy feat. Coupled with waste perched precariously above the elm fork makes this doubly difficult. This isn't simply a neighborhood or a region saying, not in my backyard. This is a region saying clearly, clean water trumps trash. In addition, Farmers Branch doesn't use this facility in a sustainable manner. The refusal to institute a curbside recycling program and thereby shortening the life of the facility considerably shows they aren't interested in providing a long-term resource for North Texas. They're simply looking at generating revenue, whatever the cost. I appreciate the TCEQ's hard work and the stringent bar you have set. Don't allow this permit to move forward. We can find other places and ways to dispose of trash. The same cannot be said for clean water.
Garza.
My name is Calla Davis, and I'm from Farmers Branch. In 1980, I was elected to the Farmers Branch City Council, and one of the major things that we had to deal with was Camelot. And I will tell you that we first sent our city manager and our community service advisor, Tom Scales and Rich Escalante, to the city of Carrollton and asked them not to do the development that is right next to the landfill. Now, it's not next to Camelot. It's next to the DFW service landfill, which is much larger. I will also tell you that later on in those years, we as a city council and the mayor went to the city council of the city of Carrollton, visited their study session when this property was being developed, and asked them, please don't put residential areas near a landfill, even though we were not, the Camelot was not that adjacent to that landfill. We just knew that being downwind was not appropriate. And I will tell you that the city of Carrollton politely told the city of Farmers Branch to pound sand. I will also tell you that this, excuse me, I came here because I thought that a little history needed to be added to this and a little bit of perspective from the city of Farmers Branch, but also for the city of Carrollton and Lewisville, the Colony, all of the people who's been using this Camelot for their trash. I would also invite anyone to come to Camelot. I talked to the mayor today. He will fill a bus and take you to Camelot and let you see how this landfill is actually run. There have been 15 complaints about smell sent to your commission, and every single one of them has been found to be a non-source from Camelot. I'm not saying that there are not smells coming from landfills. I'm saying they're not coming from Camelot. And what the residents are seeing is not Camelot. What they are seeing is the DFW landfill.
Let's go slow.
I know that I'm probably in the lion's den here, but I just want you to realize that there at the time that landfill was put in, the city of Farmers Branch moved completely into an unincorporated area and set that landfill up for future use for the city. And if we choose to shut it down or close it up, where are you going to go and where are you going to put your trash? And I'm sorry that there wasn't other councils that had the backbone to not allow a developer to put the residents on that area there. But that's what happened, and I really think that this commission needs a little bit of perspective, and that's why I sat through this meeting this evening to let you know that I was there. I visited with the council, and we asked them, please do not put residential in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Garza, followed by Mary Carter.
Yes, Bob Garza, councilman for Carrollton, place 4. And again, thank you for being here this evening. Like has been previously mentioned, I know you've got a tough task ahead of you. I urge you that before you make your decision and the process that you have to go through, that you allow the input. I know popular vote is not a criteria, as the attorney said, but there's a reason why this is unpopular. And the history with what the landfill has up to date is a lot of the reasons why it's so unpopular. But I ask, do your research. You've got professionals on your staff, and if you have the ability to go and find those that will help you, as we have the city, we've gone through expense to hire those folks that are professionals that can help us and be able to come and tell you this is the reason why this shouldn't be done. So in addition to that, we need additional public input. And there is like I said, there's a reason why this is unpopular. It doesn't have to be an engineer or a geologist to say this place smells. There's been toxic deposits that have gone through the liner, whatever it is. And excuse my ignorance here, but I'm not, a professional at this. So I asked myself a simple question: why is the city doing this? Why is Farm and Ranch doing this? They've got anywhere from 15 to 29 years left in this capacity. I'm on the council, we've been on the council, and we know that the decisions we make affects the city. And if you make one wrong decision as a city, it can cost you millions. And so therefore you have to deal with that. And unfortunately, Farmers Branch has made some decisions that are costing them millions. And this is the way they're trying to solve that solution, or that problem. At the expense of Carrollton and Lewisville residents. They don't care. But I ask you, please, before you make that decision, consider the fact that this landfill, if it is 29 years today, and the amendment asking for that extension, if it's 100 years, those numbers don't really matter. The attorney said it's the volume that goes into that landfill. So what am I thinking? Well, I'm thinking that the city is actually expanding the service so that they can put more capacity quicker into that landfill because it's more revenue. That's what it is. And so please think about that and what that's going to do to the problems that the landfill at this time is already causing. So I'm opposing this amendment, and please use your common sense and all your professional help to make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis Porter, followed by Adam Colford.
Good evening. I'm Mary Carter, representing the city of Lewisville. I have already turned in written comments, so I will be very brief tonight. And also many of my issues that I believe are very important have already been mentioned by other people who have spoken. So I'll be brief. We'll start out with safety issues. There has been detection of hazardous waste in the monitor wells on the south side of the landfill. These monitor wells are situated between the old pre-subtitle B portion of the landfill and the Trinity River. Contamination may therefore be in communication with the Trinity River. Downstream from this point are several water treatment plants, which lead people to be having this water as their drinking water. Next, I'd like to express my concern about the use of the modification process to strip away issues that are appropriate for the contested case hearing. Specifically, the use of the contaminated soil as cover is a perfectly appropriate and should be heard in the contested case hearing. Also, I believe that the slurry wall, which was mentioned for the first time tonight, to my knowledge, is also appropriate for review under a contested case hearing. There are technical issues, such as possible air pollution from burning gas, the integrity of the pre-subtitle heat liner, the impact of the expansion on the pre-subtitle section of the landfill, Do the groundwater monitoring wells meet the TCEQ and EPA standards? Are there surface water issues, such as the integrity of the internal drainage system and detection system? And finally, is the height increase consistent with the land use requirements in the city of Lewisville? We are opposed to this expansion, and we ask you to take a hard look at this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam Polter, followed by Josefina Castro.
Good evening, my name is Adam Polter. First, I want to thank the TCEQ for coming here, your service to the state and to us, to our community. Also, our officials who took their time out to be present tonight as well. I had a couple questions that didn't get asked, so I'm going to go ahead and present those now. Obviously, I know I'm not going to get a response. What was the original permit cap height at, or why was the original permit cap height at 523 feet above sea level? And what was the rationale at that time, or what has changed to justify the amendment? As part of the permit application process, what alternatives have been reviewed if the application is denied? If a detailed plan is not required by the permit application, it should be. Does the application include guarantees regarding how the extra 100 acres that were slated for wood recycling and access would be used? In other words, they say they're going to use it for these uses. Is there something in the application that specifically states they can only use it for that sort of application as opposed to using it for waste? I'm curious why the Farmers Branch is requesting the expansion as opposed to just looking at the alternative that someone else mentioned, going to a location to the north. What is the average cap height of similar landfills in the Dallas area? I was born and raised, I'm 45 years old, I was born and raised here in Dallas. Moved to Carrollton, bought a house in the Creek Ridge Estates subdivision just on the north side of Hebron at Old Denton about 10 and a half years ago. I've never seen anything like what we have over there where we have the DFW landfill, Camelot Landfill, which it hasn't come up today, but which we endearingly refer to as Mount Trashmore. So, looking throughout all of Dallas, you don't see anything like that. Its proximity to the Trinity River, which again is a source of drinking water. I imagine all of you live or work in the Austin area. Having been down there several times, I cannot imagine for a minute that the people of Austin would allow a landfill of any of this nature anywhere close to the Colorado River or the Edwards Aquifer. They're incredibly rigid down there about how that land is used. And I would hope that as y'all are reviewing this application, you kind of use that same kind of common sense, as someone else put it, when you think about the expansion of this one. As characterized previously, this permit request is similar to a request for a new landfill. Why would we put a new landfill in such a populated area? I would think you would deny that and allow them to request one somewhere else. If the TCEQ follows the direction of the legislature, as was stated earlier, I implore our local, state, and federal representatives to fight for us, your constituents. And where the regulations have not kept up with the times, let's bring them up to date. It was stated earlier that sampling and monitoring take place at these landfills. Sampling and monitoring cannot remove the fact that it's a landfill. It was stated that some of these barriers, the clay and all the other technical, that this is a very low permeability layer. Well, very low permeability is not impermeable. And when we're talking about the proximity, 125-foot buffer between the landfill and a water source, that's not sufficient.
That's really it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Josefina Castro, followed by Ron Simmons.
Hello, can you hear me? My name is Josefina Castro. I live in Coyote Ridge. And this is my first meeting ever out of the 12 years that I live in my home. My biggest complaint is that I cannot even have my grandkids play outside. The odor is outside of my house, inside of the house, every square inch of my house. My grandkids now don't come and visit me because of the smell. I'm not only thinking about the smell, I'm thinking about what the water is doing to all of our lives. And I have been informed very well today, and I really would love for you to press very strong attention to everything that is brought to your attention today. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Simmons.
Thank you. I'm Ron Simmons. I'm the Republican nominee for House District 65. So if I'm fortunate enough to be elected on November the 6th, then I'll be occupying the seat that Bert Solomons currently has. And therefore, my concern is that all 170,000 people in House District 65 are affected by this application. And that is a major concern. The water source for all 170,000 people in our district are affected by this application. And this is not, I mean, unlike my friend from Farmers Branch, who represents Farmers Branch, who lives 200 miles away, I live 2 miles away, as do many of the people that are affected by this application. And this is not only about neglect of Farmers Branch to consider everything involved. This is about the health of the people due to the potential and we believe current contamination of the water source, the air source, and the ground source. And so therefore, we stand opposed, I stand opposed to this application. This is not about anything other to do than with money. As we know in my business, in the finance business, if you just follow the money, you find the answers. And the answer to this question is it's a revenue stream for the city of Farmers Branch. And the number one thing that a city needs to not be doing is be in the business of being in business. We need to be in the business of serving our constituents. And it's not about making revenue. It's about serving not only our own people who live within our city, but as Charles Emory pointed out, it's about being good neighbors. And about being good neighbors is not doing things that can potentially contaminate the soil and the water and the air of the people that live beside you. And so therefore, when we talk about, as Mr. Andoni, Councilor Andoni said, common sense, this is a very simple decision that I am quite certain that the TCEQ will come to a final conclusion on, and that common sense would not dictate building a new landfill on top of another new landfill. It would certainly not dictate having one that directly affects 4 elementary schools within a couple of miles and daycare centers as well. And in all due respect to the lady from Farmers Branch, we do understand that there was a landfill there when that was developed, and the people that bought those houses knew that. But what we didn't understand, and we did agree to, that there was going to be another landfill built on top of that. And we will do everything within the power of the city and the officers and the lady that we are having to hold to do what we can to work with you to stop this. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you. James Cotton.
Hello, I'm James Cotton. I'm actually live in Coyote Ridge. Moved there 3.5 years ago. I did not know that there was going to be another landfill built on top of that landfill. I knew there was landfills there, and I accepted it, moved forward. But now I'm really worried about my health, my kids' health, my grandbaby. What we're seeing here, what I actually understand tonight, and I've been pretty involved in our community, we've got more leaks than I remember hearing in the past from other people. I think Mr. Ferguson was very articulate earlier. Yes, doing a great job. So if we're already having leaks from what was, I think, built back in the 80s, they said, that area that didn't have the liner, in my opinion, shouldn't we already be applying the laws of the land to have them fix that before we do anything else? So I'm opposed to y'all approving this, and I do want to thank all of the Congress, our council members that are from here from Carrollton and Lewisville tonight. We appreciate all your help, but I definitely oppose this. I'm a resident in Coyote Ridge. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right. Gerald, is it Roaring? R-O-E-H, perhaps R-I-G? Could you spell your last name for me when you get to the mic? Okay.
Yes, I'm Gerald Roehrig, R-O-E-H-R-I-G, resident of Carrollton. And I have 3 comments to make regarding the proposed landfill expansion. The reason for expanding the landfill is because you've got more stuff coming into it. And my concern is that we need to look at alternative technologies to reduce that amount of waste going into the landfill before we expand the landfill. There are technologies such as clean combustion, which can take care of a lot of those issues. And if that's implemented, if it can reduce the need, perhaps eliminate the need for expanding the landfill. My second concern is regarding the odors. And there are odors, and if you're ever in the area, you know that there are odors. And whether they're hazardous, whether they're not hazardous, I don't think we have an answer to that. And I think we need to do some statistical representative sampling of the gases that come off that landfill and find out exactly what we're looking at. And I think that should be done before we go any farther looking at the technological side of it. And then my third concern is what I would call visual contamination. I've done hundreds of environmental site assessments for cell phone towers, and before they can put up a cell phone tower, one of the considerations is, what's the visual impact in the area? Well, a 260-foot mountain certainly has a bigger visual impact than a cell tower does, and I think that ought to be a consideration as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Washington, followed by Lucas Ryan Lavette.
Good evening. My name is Tom Washington. I'm a 30-year resident of Carrollton. I'm a local businessman, and I also serve as an officer of the Republican Party of Texas. I appreciate the TCEQ holding the meeting, the public meeting, at the request of Representative Solomons and Senator Nelson in the local area. I'm here to speak in opposition to this 1312A and B permit request by the Camelot Landfill. The request to increase the height of an existing landfill is the same as a request to extend the useful life of a landfill. This landfill has operated continuously for over 30 years. This permit, if approved, would add 202 feet to the current maximum height of the landfill. Since 30 years of operation has produced a peak height of 168 feet above ground level, we can deduce that approval of this request would extend the life of the landfill to well over 30 additional years. Some say over 100. I think it's time to say no to this permit, because by saying no to this permit, in 15 or 20 years, the city of Farmers Branch will have to go find an alternate site. An alternate site that's well away from the current adjoining land uses that really aren't consistent with having a towering landfill next to it. The sooner that you push the Farmers Branch city to look further out, the better they're going to find suitable land that's a closer drive. If you wait another 20 years, another 50 years, they may have to go to Oklahoma to find suitable land for another landfill. By making them do this sooner rather than later, by turning down this permit, I think you're actually doing them a favor. Now, I realize that TCEQ does not consider adjoining land uses in their evaluation per the administrative rules that you consider these by. I realize that some of these comments about adjoining land uses may not be considered germane to the rules and regulations. But I think it's ridiculous to assume that, Carrollton should use the adjoining land, like any city, to put rural uses to more developed uses, to urban uses, Because certainly in a high growth area like DFW, this area will develop. And a landfill that is this close, those developing pressures are just going to get worse. They're not going to get any better. Carrollton citizens are concerned that adding more than 30 years additional operating life to this landfill is really going to impact these adjoining residential neighborhoods. And you've already heard from some of the people from Coyote Ridge and from Castle Hills about the impact. This is only going to get worse. And as this gets taller and the landfill climbs to where the odors affect, this landfill is kind of down in a bowl. It's surrounded by some taller land around it at Old Denton, but as you get taller, these odors and these effects are going to jump Old Denton. They're going to go over to Castle Hills, and they're going to go over to other parts of Carrollton. And Carrollton is a city of 127,000 and still growing. There are parts of Lewisville that are going to be affected, and certainly, as everybody's testified in the watershed, the Trinity River watershed, you're affecting most of Texas. So this is very significant. As we know, landfills are poor neighbors. They bring bad odors. When I drive down the public Hebron Parkway, I sometimes have to try to hold my breath for several miles. I just can't stand the noxious gases that come off these landfills. And as a person from Farmers Branch said, well, those odors aren't from Camelot. Those odors are from DFW landfill. But do the odors from Camelot smell any different than DFW landfill? How can you tell? Is there a way to put roses in the Camelot odors so that you can tell when you smell a rose versus something from the DFW landfill? These landfills are not good neighbors. They shouldn't be expanded. Granted, the neighbors have already said that they bought into the current height that's there, but you shouldn't allow a landfill to be added on top of another landfill as Representative Simmons has stated, or soon to be Representative Simmons. I would urge the state legislature to consider changing the state law and changing the rules under which these types of applications are adjudicated, such that you can consider adjoining land uses and the public comments that you get in these types of hearings, just like you would in a zoning hearing for a city. Now, I know that at this point, those laws don't really give you license to look at those types of concerns, but I urge our legislators to change those laws, maybe even as soon as the 2013 session, so that future permits can consider the public more than they're able to now. I would urge you to vote against this permit request. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You can sign that.
Good evening. My name is Lucas Lovett. I am a citizen of Lewisville for 12 years of last Monday. I attend Lewisville High School, and I am a Boy Scout of America troop member of 9168, Lewisville, Texas. And my troop meets at the VFW post number 9168 near Landfill. As an Eagle Scout candidate, I am working on my Eagle Scout project to better our environment. And as a Boy Scout of America, I understand my duty to my country and to my environment. I would strongly urge you to reject this proposal and work for a smarter solution that will cause less harm to our environment. Please consider our lack of options to future land use. In conclusion, I want to say that as a teenager, I am used to adults telling me when something is a bad idea. So thank you for this opportunity to tell adults that this is a bad idea. I speak for the future generations when I say this proposal is a bad idea. Thank you for your time.
Remedios, Sorag, not going to do that well. Is that person here? The last name is Soriaga. Ali or Marlene Arif, A-R-I-F. Terry Caston, C-A-S-T-A-G-N-E. Jennifer Forey. Jose Cherian, C-H-E-R-I-A-N on Kickapoo Trail. James Collier. Jack Powers. Bingo.
Hi, my name is Jack Powers. I was in here a little earlier. Actually, before I start, I'll make one comment. I was kind of disappointed the gentleman from Farmers Branch couldn't answer questions regarding the permit amendment, but that's to be expected. Anyway, I'm speaking on behalf of members of the Indian Creek Homeowners Association. We have 7 subdivisions that border the Camelot and DFW landfills on the east and the south. So we're very familiar with the issues regarding the landfills. I will disagree with the earlier gentleman, though, that for the past few years, both DFW landfill and Camelot landfill and the city of Farmers Branch have been good neighbors. We worked with them to reduce some of the nuisances about the neighborhood, changing some of the backup noise makers that the machineries make, working with them to reduce odors, conducting tours of the landfills by our neighbors and that sort of thing. We have quarterly meetings with the TCEQ, both landfills, the cities of Lewisville and Carrollton and Farmers Branch. And so, you know, things haven't been that bad, really. I mean, I'll talk about some of the problems we have in a second, but still, there has been progress that's been made, and, you know, we've worked together, I think, pretty well over the last few years. Now, all of a sudden, Farmers Branch wanting to extend the life of the landfill another, probably 40 to 50 years beyond the existing life, then, you know, that kind of goes against, you know, what should really be considered as working together as good neighbors. So, you know, we're very disappointed in that standpoint. We certainly appreciate the efforts of the cities of Lewisville and Carrollton to, you know, put together their political, legal muscle to fight this thing. And all we can do as citizens is to try to fight it from a public opinion standpoint. So, you know, we're very pleased with the turnout we had today. We're kind of disappointed the question and answer session went too long. We wish the moderator could have cut that short so more people could have heard the comments. But be that as it may, you know, there was quite a large turnout. A lot of people were concerned about this problem, and you know, we appreciate their turnout. Understand that the main concern, or the only things that really TCEQ cares about, are harm to the environment and the public health. And we understand that. That's the rules we're going to play by. But there are harms to the environment and public health. I think it's been well documented, some of the issues regarding the groundwater contamination found around Camelot. I won't speak to that anymore. It's been well documented. Although as a chemist, I'm kind of curious how arsenic can migrate through landfill gases. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but maybe the representatives from Farmers Branch can explain that one away. My main issue in the past 5 years has been tracking odor levels. We had a volunteer effort from 5 volunteer families that live in our neighborhoods that 3 times a day they stick their nose outside and they smell and they judge the odors on a 0 to 3 basis, 0 being no odors, 3 being very severe. And they've been tracking that, again, for the last 5 years. We gathered the data, we reported in our quarterly meetings, TCEQ has that data. And what's been found is for the past 4 or 5 years, on the average, during the smelly months, which are the spring and fall, February, April, and May, and then in the fall, September, October, and November. On the average, we have 5 or more days a year in which we have moderate or strong odors in the neighborhoods. And it's not a, you know, truly scientific survey, but we do have fair good repeatability amongst the different neighbors. So it's not like somebody's out there trying to torpedo the results. But that's the result. So on the average, and you know, for 6 months out of the year, we have odors, moderate to strong odors in our neighborhoods more than 1 day a week. And I contend that's a harm to human health. Typically during the summer, it's dry, we have south winds, and there's no odors. So in June, July, and August, everything's wonderful. The trouble is, it's hotter than hell, people got the windows shut, they're not going outside, and then here comes fall, it cools down, they go outside, and they get blasted with odors. And I've been told that by a number of the neighbors, that it's just so frustrating to them that they're not able to enjoy their neighborhood, to enjoy their life, to enjoy their residence, because of the fact that during those times of the year, they get hit with serious odors. So I just ask you, I realize that it's public health and the environment, but I wish you take into account that this effect of the odors on the people living near those landfills, it seriously affects their health. Thank you.
Thank you. Sajay Matthew. Hal Luston.
My name is Hal Lester. I live in Coyote Ridge, section of Carrollton. I hope you all feel better, because I think the purpose of this meeting, obviously, is to let us vent, so we will just quietly go away, because I think the decisions have already been made. The people behind me on the stage and the commission that they serve are not elected officials. They operate by rules that are not laws that we pass. They make their own rules, their own laws. There was a politician who once said, "When I feel the heat, I see the light." And the heat needs to be applied to the person who appoints this commission. And that is the governor of the state. I don't have much confidence in the governor who will make a decision that all the girls in Texas should have shots at his discretion. And apparently that was overcome. I think he felt the heat on that. That's the only thing that's going to be done. You know, we grew up, I think most of us, believing that we have a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. When in reality, what we're seeing more of now is government of government, by government, and for government, and we need to turn that around.
Graylin or Angela Etherly. Douglas Hicks.
I'd like to thank you for holding this meeting tonight. My name is Douglas Hicks, resident of Lewisville. I appreciate the diligence displayed thus far in the process by the commission. Through prior research and from comments heard here tonight, it appears to me that the adequacy of the landfill's current monitoring is questionable at best. Further, the monitoring that is in place has identified contaminants in statistically excessive amounts for several years. Given the landfill's proximity to the Trinity River, a source of drinking water for many cities in North Texas and beyond, I would consider it irresponsible to allow any expansion of the landfill until concerns regarding its environmental impact are fully addressed. My opposition to expansion also applies to request 1312A. Thank you.
Thank you. Howard, is it Baltzman or Margot Diamond? Is it Councilman Anthony Wilder? Sorry, you got to the back of the pile.
Oh, it's okay. We've got a few more. First of all, I'd like to thank y'all for being here this evening and having a meeting in Carrollton. I'd like to thank Bert and Jane for both requesting this meeting. I just have a few comments that are echoing what's already been said. Some of you touched on these, but I just want to enter them into the record, so I'll be brief. Of course, I'm opposed to this. Oh, sorry, Anthony Wilder. I'm on the Carrollton City Council, place 2. The first concern is that further expansion is no longer appropriate due to the current uses of adjacent land, which many have touched on. The second is that the city that's submitting this application does not provide curbside recycling. I think that should be considered. That if the city wants to make this expansion, that they should at least have some kind of intention to defer or reduce waste that goes into the landfill. The third thing is that, I mentioned 2 items, wetlands and air traffic are to be considered. The first one is wetlands. As many have stated, this is adjacent to a wetland, which is the Trinity River, which serves millions of people in the state of Texas. And it has been shown that contaminants are getting into that wetland. And then the fourth thing I want to point out is that there are flights who arrive towards DFW that do fly over this area. I mentioned that air traffic is considered, so I'd like y'all to at least look into that this will be 700 and something feet above sea level. And that's all I have. Thank you very much for doing
Thank
this
you.
meeting.
John, is it is it E-H-I? It is? Could you spell your last name for me? Is it E-C-H? State your name for the record for me, thanks.
John Aiden. I think this application needs to be needs to be rejected, but in addition, I also think that other speakers have commented on the proximity to a public water source. I guess what is not sort of the reason that it's relevant that it's close to a public water source is that anything that puts at risk a water source in DFW, it's going to require the cities to look elsewhere. And this region is already suffering from a pretty severe water shortage. And with droughts, there are restrictions, and in addition to restrictions, we have zebra mussels. And so I would ask that as you're reviewing the technical requirements of this, that because of its potential effect on a public water source, whatever risk is allowed should be lower. Whatever tolerance is allowed should be as low as possible. And whatever the standard is should be as high as possible to protect the sources of public drinking water. Because if you don't, if there's a risk to happen, if something happens to the water supply in the Trinity River, then all the cities in the region that pull on that will have to go to other demand sources, and that will raise the cost for everybody. More specifically to this application, I think it should be rejected solely for the purpose, specifically for the purpose that it is not combined with 1312A. And 1312A basically says that they're going to use contaminated soil for cover dirt. And the big problem I have with that is that it means that in order for the public to assess and to try to pick through the legal and engineering issues of an expansion without having that in the context of the cover dirt, it's really kind of stacking against the deck against us. And I think it really undermines the idea that we discussed earlier that this is effectively the same as a new permit application. You couldn't have a new permit application that says, okay, we're going to have a landfill of this size and we're going to use cover dirt for something. Right? They would have to be one application. And so I think letting Allied Waste and Farmers Branch do this in 2 applications really kind of undermines the argument that this is like a new application. It undermines the idea that you're giving the public the same opportunity to comment. And I think the purpose, I would surmise that the purpose of dividing the applications is to obfuscate the true intent, which is a much larger, more toxic landfill, which is the change they intend to make. And I think by doing that, I think it shows that Farmers Branch and Allied Waste are intending to abuse their processes to try to get their result. And to the people that are here, if you look around, there's about 20% of the people that were here before. Our friends at Farmers Branch and Allied Waste have made a calculation. And their calculation is that 80% of us are going to leave after the question in the recess. And they made a calculation that we will not organize and we will not stay with it long enough and be effective enough to have an effect. And our job, I think, is to do the opposite, is to stay organized, to stay effective, and longer than they calculated, because they do have a point at which they will yell on them. And we need to help them get there. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, John, what is your street name? It is like Lady Lord? Is it L-O-R-E?
L-O-R-E.
Benigno, I can't do that one. Flores? Tom Esposito? Scott Crane? The last name is Ajunwan, A-J-U-N-W-O-N. Kevin Falconer?
Thank you. I'm Kevin Falconer, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Carrollton. I do appreciate your time coming tonight and listening to us. I've been on that side a lot. I won't reiterate all of what several of my other colleagues have mentioned, but I would like to take just a moment to say my appreciations for my colleague from Farmers Branch, acknowledging that a landfill and residential uses are not appropriate adjacent to one another. In all due respect to her, I would say that this is not about 1980, this is about today, and that this is about a new landfill application essentially, and we have residential uses that are inappropriate, or uses that are inappropriate near this residential. I've served for over 10 years on either planning and zoning commissions or on the city council and heard hundreds, if not thousands, of land use cases. And I can honestly tell you I've never seen one that is as black and white and as egregious as this one. And it would be quite easy, in my estimation, to make a decision. I would appeal to your common sense on this, as my fellow council member Jeff Andonian pointed out as part of your commission, to look at this from that standpoint. And this is a very inappropriate use and unacceptable to allow this to go forward. Thank you very much for your time.
Stephen Bacchus?
I passed to Barry Parker.
Okay. Aravino Puta? Kashida Candero? Gary Woolley?
Hi, my name is Gary Woolley, and I currently live in the Oak Hills neighborhood in North Carrollton, not far from the Camelot Landfill. It is incomprehensible that the City of Farmers Branch and TCEQ is considering expansion of this landfill. Are you seriously considering making the current mountain of trash a tower of trash, 30 floors high? This landfill is already an environmental disaster, having documented contaminants including arsenic, vinyl chloride, trichloroethane, and others. These known human carcinogens represent a threat to my neighbor's health as well as serious as any other currently known. That Farmers Branch will even consider further expansion of this landfill is another example of government malfeasance that we constantly see in today's world. I not only oppose this expansion,
but I also want to see efforts stepped up to clean up the current issues threatening our drinking water and personal health. Furthermore, this Camelot Landfill still has 22 years or so of life left under the current permit, and this should be dramatically reduced, until the environmental issues are resolved. Also, I'd like to ask what happens when Camelot is full. It's time to start working, especially Farmers Branch, on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. It's Emma, is it Bayarde, B-E-L-A-R-D-E? Subash Saha, S-A-H-A? Is it Diep and then Dam? Antonio Rega, R-E-G-A? John Waykage? That's close.
I'm John Whaley. I represent County Ridge Golf Course and Golf Club. We are the, I think you call it affected persons with different than general public concern. Our golf course is right butts up to Camelot Landfill. And so our concerns are water safety, and obviously health, odors, and everything else, but the birds, things that go on like that. But one of the major concerns about water is all the water from our golf course, all the water we use for irrigation, for sprinkling the fairways and the greens and filling up ponds, including a city pond, comes from an intake valve from the Trinity River, which is on our 17th fairway, which is just south of Camelot. Now our concern is that we're taking this water and taking it out of the riverbanks and putting it out here. And with the amount of stuff that we have been privy to in the last few years with the contamination of the wells and moving of wells and things like that, that has been brought up. I also attend the quarterly landfill meetings. And in fact, when it first started, Camelot was one of the main reasons we started this thing 9 years ago. Jack was there. There was a tremendous order that went into Castle Hills, halfway down Carrollton, all the way into Capel and Lewisville. Well, that started a monthly meeting with DFW Landfill, Camelot Landfill, cities of Farmers Branch, Lewisville, cities of Carrollton, the Homeowners Association, our HOA, which consists of 1,359 homes. And Frank Espino is the one that started this thing, and Sam's Barrett's been coming ever since the beginning. We've discussed and tried to work with the landfills to solve problems, to become better neighbors on both sides. One thing that we did at the very beginning, there was a lot of contention, and we heard a lot of, well, we were here first. You know, the landfills will tell us, well, we were here first, you built your house. Well, I'd like to turn that around. Now we're here first. And now they want to change the game plan. We've invested in the area, and we have put up with the health problems we've had. The birds are a definite problem. They come in our neighborhoods, they come on our golf course, and work with the landfills to keep the waste from the birds out of the neighborhoods, but sometimes it's a never-ending battle. It's gotten to a point in the last few years where, like Jack says, most of the time we get great cooperation from the landfills, but we've had problems with odors, and the odors that we get on the golf course are definitely from, the majority of them are from Camelot. And so I've asked for the last 3 years if they'd be interested and would help us by putting a deodorizing plan in, like they did in DFW. And we've gotten pushback on that tremendously. So now when we have odors on the golf course, I call DFW and they'll turn on the misting systems. You know, what happens when that landfill is full, and they have no intention of going up because they know it's too much of a populated area. And so, you know, how are we going to deal with this from then on? But again, that's pretty much it. But I think that this request, especially with the 1,700 ton a day intake that they have at Camelot right now, in the last report I had, I just can't see them needing any sort of variance for a few years. I think it's premature. And later on down the line, I think we can make a more rational decision about that once we find out about the contaminants that we have found and the do a little more investigating.
Thank you. Chris and Janine Cole, K-O-L-L.
Well, I wasn't planning on speaking again, but with the longevity of the evening, I thought I would.
Can you state your name correctly?
Janine Cole. And my husband and I actually bought a home in the Carrollton area about 1991, in Oak Hills actually, and now live in Lewisville, just adjacent to that neighborhood, actually Castle Hills. And the smell as you drive down the 121 corridor over these last 20 years, the last 5 years has gotten amazingly. I would agree with the gentleman that said you have to actually hold your nose as you pass by through those landfills when you drive by. And it's not a case of we don't want it in our backyard. I mean, we all bought our homes in this area knowing that those landfills were there. The families that bought homes in the Coyote Ridge area have, and all of us knew though, and trusted our officials and commissions that it had a lifespan based upon what it was at that time of purchase. And based upon working with those organizations in those quarterly meetings, trusted that those health concerns and our concerns of future expansion would be mitigated because there wouldn't be. And so it's like we are here now, and unlike what the council member from Farmers Branch indicated, the homes were built by the landfill. You can't undo that. And Carrollton is landlocked, so if they wanted to grow as a city, you had to develop those areas, and those homes are there now. So to approve a landfill on top of another landfill when there's homes there and there's such a densely populated area, to me, not to reiterate what everyone's already said, but for the record, doesn't make sense. And just one final point seems especially irresponsible when the gentleman representing Farmers Branch tonight, Mr. Ryans, acknowledged that there are breaches in the current integrity of the current landfill. It doesn't seem right on a public health basis. It doesn't seem right on an economic development basis, based upon economies thriving or not, based upon smell and all the other negative impacts. It's not the right thing to do. And we ask for your sincere consideration. Thank you for spending the long hours, but please put the additional time in to look at the facts and make the right decision.
Thank you. I don't have anyone else that registered to give a formal comment. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to give a comment? Yes, if you'll step up to the mic. Did you fill out a sign-in sheet?
I did.
That's fine. If you'll state your name for the record.
My name is Pei Zhao. I'm also a resident in Coyote Ridge, and I want to speak my experience. And I want to say that all my neighbors there in Coyote Ridge, in the surrounding area, Lewisville and in Carrollton, all they said are true. And I want to appreciate you all coming here, the staff and TCEQ, I know it's hard. And I want to thank our elected officials and the people officials coming here to speak our mind. They truly did. They truly did speak our mind. I lived in Coyote Ridge for 11 years, and I also attend those landfill meetings. So I have the first hand what it's like out there. Okay, I live my house about 1 mile away from the landfill. And I do drive, past Hebron and 121 on every day, if I don't travel. So I know all the statement about the smelling bad, it's really true, especially when you rain. And unfortunately, when our neighbors complain about the odor, about things happen, the odor don't last forever, okay? They last a few hours. But unfortunately, when TCEQ have representative to come over, most of the time, odor either the level of, already dissipate. It's just like it doesn't rain forever, the rain will stop or whatever. And sometimes it does last a very long time, but a lot of time, when you come over, well, the heavy odor is gone, or not as heavy, okay? So just want to make the fact clarify, there's a statement there that there's inspection, whatever, you didn't find the problem. The problem not there, always there, okay? And I want to just clarify, my neighbor, I get the statement earlier, the landfill operator, they do work with us. They do try hard, I do say, not the city of Farmers Branch, I don't think they care, but the operator, they do try. But despite their efforts, we still have a lot of problems. We have a lot of problems. And I want to tell you a few, and all the things that have been said are very true, but a few things I want to add to it. One is, well, I guess it's already mentioned, birds problem, okay? We know birds can carry disease. And there are certain type of birds only associated with landfill. There's no landfill, I move from other area, you cannot find those type of birds. We see those type of birds, and then in fact, I have some birds die in my swimming pool, in my yard. I had to pick them up. I had to call, animal control. So that is a public health issue. That's a public health issue. In fact, I have to tell my children to come back to the house. Okay, don't play outside because there's birds. Okay, so that's a public health issue. And I wanted to speak also, because I'm a professional engineer, registered in the state of Texas, I want to talk a little bit technical terms beyond what has been said here. I know we have talked a great deal about the ground infiltration, okay? You have so much pressure coming down, coming to it. I've seen those IP tests, as graduate student years ago, those could happen, okay? But one thing that has not mentioned is when you have a tremendous amount of storm coming down, we could have a Katrina type of event happen to the Trinity River. If you have a pile of trash that high, when it's all saturated, you see those in the hills in California, some other area that happen, it could happen here. If this were a vacant land around it, maybe that would slide and nobody would notice it. But it will slide into our river, our drinking water source. What does that mean? If there's a slow infiltration, maybe the treatment plant can treat it or do something to minimize. I don't think you can get rid of it. But what if this power trash sliding out the river? What does that mean to our region? We're shutting down our water plant. Our family won't have water to drink. Our kids won't have water to drink. That's a big problem. That's a big problem. We need to prevent those type of issues from coming up. And you represent us. I know there was a statement earlier, maybe it's not a popular word, or whatever. But at the end of the day, you work for the state government. You are responsible for us, the taxpayers, right? If 100% of here, except that lady and their attorney, only that one person, our hundreds of these, support this one, and the rest of us oppose this one. Do you still go along with that one person? Do you still go with that? Do you work for us, the people of the state of Texas? That's a question I want to ask. I want to continue the odor problem. It has been said, Yes, that's a huge, huge issue. And I have to say, I have to echo some of the friends, because that's so, even though it has been said, I won't say that again, that is very true, especially when it rains. Okay, not only you drive through even Parkway or 121, you could smell it from, say, a mile or 2 miles away. But in our area, in my area, I'm a little bit further away in the Coyote Ridge area, and high up in the hill, I still smell it. Okay, there was time that I have invited people to barbecue. I had to call and say, everybody get inside. Just smell terrible outside. It affects the health of our family and our children. And I want to turn a little bit to the technical side. If the liner is clay liner, we all know clay is strength and expand, okay, in engineering term or technical term. When it's really dry, it crack, okay? Well, we've seen those happen, right? You don't water it long, crack open big time, especially the clay. So if you have a big storm coming in, guess what? All this thing can go through the crack quickly into our river. So if that's happening, that is happening. Maybe when it's raining hard, you don't go outside and test the water. And unfortunately, but I know that has happened. It's just the mother nature. The last point I try to say is that, again, I'm a professional, and speaking to the professional, our professional responsibility is the public health, the public well-being, and also to the safety, the security of the public, okay? And we also need to minimize who we work for. I assume all of you work for the state of Texas, okay? If this landfill ever slide down to the river, and then we get lawsuit from everybody here, City of Farmer Branch, that little city, can file bankruptcy, okay, go somewhere. But who is on the hook? It's the state of Texas. It's the state of Texas, the TCEQ, approve it. It's a liability issue. So us, the resident down here, we get hit on both sides. We get hit as a resident, we get hit as a taxpayer. Please take a deep thought and consideration, and please deny this application. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else? Yes. Did you fill out a sign-in sheet?
No, they ran out of sheets, so.
Why don't you state your name for the record, and then you can get with Kathy, and we'll.
Hi, my name is Dennis Gebhardt. I live at Coyote Ridge.
Can you say your last name a little bit slower?
Yes, Gebhardt, Gebhart. Thank you all for staying so late. I know everybody's getting pretty sleepy here. I just had a different issue here. It's kind of, I live on hole number 2 at Coyote Ridge, and I've been there for many, many years, and it's kind of on the bridge that overlooks hole number 2 and number 8. They go right by each other. One goes one way, one goes the other. And about 5 years ago, I noticed, just out of the last, I was thinking, gosh, I can't ever use my back porch because it's so windy. And so I bought a wind monitor 5 years ago, and I monitored the wind speed. And I don't know if you know where I'm trying, maybe this gentleman can answer my question, because as the hills get taller, maybe that creates a different wind direction or something, but I can tell you over the last 5 years that the average speed on my back porch, and I can tell you I can only use my deck about 5 days out of the year because it is so windy you can't stay up there. And the gentleman from Coyote Ridge that represents Coyote Ridge, almost every week we'll lose a tree out on number 2. I mean, the wind goes through there, it's unbelievable. But my point is I'm not sure if that's changing the topography of that particular area or what's going on, but I can tell you for the last 5 years, every year, the average wind speed on my little calculator, it's higher, and the average highest high speed is higher. And I'm not sure if it's because I don't know what the reason would be, but it certainly scares me to think there's going to be 200 feet more up that could create even more wind. And I know what happens in the mountains, the inversion from the mountains, and I'm not a person that understands all that, but I can tell you something's going on. There's something going on that's affecting the wind speed and the wind direction in my backyard. So anyway, that's it. Thanks.
Can you come over here? Sorry, get with Kathy. Is there anyone else? Yes. State your name for the record.
I think this is it, so hopefully. Chris Thatcher. I live in Coyote Ridge, and my property is very adjacent to the river and the dumps. One thing I just wanted to say, I mean, everybody here has talked in infinitum about the water concerns. I'm sure you've gotten the message. But you may not realize, and maybe you do, is that this entire area is a floodplain. And once that water is contaminated, if we ever do have a flood, which clearly somebody is providing for because there was an entire levee system required to be built prior to the development of all of this housing, that contaminated water all of a sudden instantly spreads much further than it would just by seepage. So if you could keep that in mind while looking at this application, that would be great.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Did you fill out a sign sheet earlier? Okay.
I got this notice about a week ago, and
could you step a little closer to the mic?
Yeah. I came here because I got a notice from I guess our HOA. They sent it to us in the mail, and I hadn't really put a whole lot of thought into city dumps or anything of that nature for the neighborhood we lived in. I just noticed once in a while bad smell in the neighborhood. It dawned on me that anything like this was going on. So I came here tonight to kind of get educated and kind of come to a better understanding of what's going on and why people are concerned. And I have to admit, it's raised quite a bit of concern for me. So I wrote a little something up because I'm not real good at extemporaneous speech. My biggest concern, I think, is property values. Noticing the concerns for safety and water concerns and all the issues that are going on presently with the landfill as it is. So I just kind of want to say it. My husband and I worked really, really hard to get where we are. We started out with pretty much nothing when we first got married. We have 3 beautiful children, and we've worked hard to provide them a better home, better neighborhood, and better schools to give them a leg up in life. We poured thousands of dollars into our home, much like most of the people here in Carrollton, Lewisville, Coyote Ridge, etc. And we've worked hard to buy the home that we're in. And now we're hearing basically that a 20-story building is going to be built next to our home full of trash. That's not exactly exciting to hear. The area around the landfill, as you all know, is not a barren area. There are thriving businesses, neighborhoods, and schools all around the landfill. It seems to me that Farmers Branch has a responsibility in light of the response from their good neighbors, that they should withdraw this application. It should be denied in the interest of goodwill, moral, and ethical issues this application raises. Again, I'm Marcelo Flores. This is with regard to 1312B, and I live on Queen Morgan in Castle Hills. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do you have anyone else? faked me out. Is there anyone else? If there's no one else, I'll close the public meeting for City of Farmers Branch MSW application 1312B. Thank you all for coming this evening.